All right. Welcome, people, to today's webinar, APIs on the IBM real-time data for distribution and logistics. So starting off with myself, I'm Carol Keith Rafferty, working as a support consultant here at Friedman Corporation, and I'll pass the mic on over to Adam.
I'm Adam Taylor Williams. I'm the Director of Product Development here at Cato Integrations.
I'm Paul McGee with Creative Data Research, and I'm the Customer Support Manager over here. Nice to see everyone.
I'm the Research and Development Manager here at ZWare.
George Norton. I'm with Varsity Logistics. My title is Director of Core Product Engineering, but I'm an long-time programmer.
Yes, we have a lot of experts on our group here today, and let's begin with why do APIs matter? We've got a few different reasons, really. APIs are pretty critical to the infrastructure nowadays. And with our beginning topic here, we say, what do customers really expect? And Adam, I was wondering if you could touch on that.
APIs a good way to ensure the accuracy of your data, keep things up to date, provide that kind of key integration between a lot of different systems.
Right. And notice that these are all different aspects that help accelerate a business and make it much more effective. Speed being a word quite closely tied to that. And with visibility, it really helps you gain, right, a kind of better view into the data that you're consuming or sending out to a given place. And something that's I think Paul would be able to touch on quite well is the ecosystem of tools aspect here. Uh, right, having just one central means of building all of your solutions doesn't necessarily always work. Wondering if you could touch on that some.
Absolutely. The ERPs are designed today to kind of warehouse all of your data, but communicating and reaching out and touching other business partners that you might have is kind of the new expectation that's out there. Again, to get things happening in a faster way and to be able to provide that real-time data that everybody's looking for.
Right, which there's quite a bit of overlap between that and both CDR and ZWare solutions. And yeah, Nick, you had mentioned before that having kind of accurate, up-to-date information and data is pretty important. In your experience uh, doing all the different tasks that you have, uh, where do these different data drives everything points come in, would you say?
They come in a lot of different areas. So if we have issues extracting the data because of the method that we're using, we will have situations where customers will have updated items, updated customers, things that they want to sell or people that they want to sell to immediately. And if there's something that goes wrong in that process because we're relying on querying a database that may have accessibility issues or some other situation, they can be waiting longer than they'd like to get that information and get that sale to those customers because they don't have the quick responsive API methodology that might have gotten that information in real time potentially.
Yeah, that's perfect. And this actually goes great with the next slide that we've got here. Um, part of the big issue when you have batch jobs, APIs don't necessarily come in real time. And George, you've got quite a lot of experience here. You've seen the transformation of technology over time, and prior to APIs, what was some of the setbacks that you saw with it?
Well, we would do everything. The varsity does shipping. We need to rate. We need to print labels. We didn't start using APIs till fairly recently. Now all the carriers have them, but um, we had to download the data. We had to do all the programming. If some rule changed, if a label changed, it was more programming efforts. Now the carriers, now the data, we send a request out to the carrier, we get back, we don't have to house the data. If they change the label, they got to change it. We don't have to change it. If the label's wrong, it's their fault. They complain to us all the time. There's not enough white space, all kinds of things like that. But um, the using APIs has reduced our programming efforts. We have to do a one-time API to get the data. We may have to change it once in a while, but we don't have all the massive changes that and we're still doing it because some of our customers aren't using the APIs, but we eventually will go all APIs. All the carriers have them. There are some. Only downside used to be APIs were pretty slow, and you can't have somebody shipping 10 packages a second. APIs wouldn't work, but things are faster now, and we're gradually working towards using all APIs for all of our customers all shipping needs.
Yeah, it's pretty beneficial to have that kind of, how do you say, more modular style of development with it. It's rather than having that single large data manifest, it's able to be kind of chunked in over time and built iteratively. Along with these kind of struggles that come with building APIs, Paul, one thing that we had personally talked on before was that something that a lot of customers might struggle with is being able to serve up information pretty easily and readily. And, where does some of this dropping in files struggle come with that you've seen?
Yeah, some areas where people may be warehousing data on their integrated file system on the IBM environment. Things like images come to mind right away. The having just to manage that and to have to have somebody with a photo booth set up and a high resolution camera, and then the maintenance of maintaining almost an image database and linking it to the right items and things like that. Um, in the future, I think the way for us to be able to really provide that data is to go out and identify these items like on a vendor API call to be able to serve up a Snicker bar or something like that. And there are companies out there that use like One World Sync, for instance, where all of these major manufacturers kind of consolidate their data and seeing how we could leverage some of those things in the future. That's something that is on the roadmap to investigate and see how that looks like in the future.
Yeah, glad you mentioned that. It's to let folks know we've got a little bit of a teaser. We'll say here, we'll be showing you a kind of demonstration of a way that you can build APIs in RPG. And that's one of the major capabilities of the solution that Adam works with, called RPG API Express. And kind of in that context, Adam, what are some of the ways or means that not only RPG API Express, but APIs in general, like how can one benefit from having those built?
Yeah. I mean, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit. APIs are they're increasingly critical for businesses for being able to actually share information in real time. A lot of companies are dealing with business partners that are starting to have the expectation that you need to communicate with an API or offer an API. Like George pointed out, shipping carriers have largely all tried to move everything over to APIs. Just pretty much everything is moving to APIs as kind of a standardized method of communication.
Yeah, glad you mentioned that. Yeah, George, and you said that there were some pretty major changes when it comes to uh, XML versus JSON being produced.
Yeah, the initial APIs were generally in XML, but uh, now they're going to JSON. We actually have to retire, an XML API for a couple of carriers and redo it in JSON. JSON. That seems to be the what's happening in general. JSON is you're transmitting fewer characters. I think you're
Mm,
transmitting basically it's the same data. It's just maybe a little easier to develop the APIs.
yeah,
There's
like you
not
were saying, they've gotten a lot faster over time as a result of, different standards that people produce.
yeah
Yeah,
the
it's
communications networks are faster. We still have a carrier that wants 5 APIs to ship a box. We're not doing that one yet, but someday.
right. Oh, when it comes to APIs, they tell people to kind of conceptualize it. They'll usually come in a kind of basic structure here, where the typical API flow has a compose, transmit, parse kind of structure to it. And Adam, would you be able to touch on that a little more?
Yeah, so when you're calling an API, there's going to be some variability depending on the operations that you're performing. If it's an HTTP GET request, which usually won't have actual request data versus a post, which will. But typically, your first step is going to be creating some sort of JSON or XML to actually encapsulate the data you need to send to the API. You have to actually send it to the API, including whatever authentication might need to happen, or any other peculiarities of any given API. You'll get data back from the API typically, and then you want to actually be able to do something with that. You need to extract data out of the JSON or the XML, whatever it is you got back, and be able to actually take action with that in a business context.
Right, so that's, the calling, or it's also kind of called consuming, right, in a way to make use of an external vendor's data or, a whole system of information that they have. And one thing that we've noticed is that people may themselves have information that they want to serve up. So I figure you'd be able to talk to the kind of offering workflow as well.
Yeah, it's very similar. It's just kind of turned inside out. If you're offering an API, you're expecting people to send you data. So you have to be able to receive that data, extract whatever it is that they sent, do something with it. Typically, if you get sent an item number and it's a lookup, you got to get that item number and then do something with it, look it up in your database. Uh, you're going to build a JSON or XML response typically to send back to whoever called your API and push it back to them. So that way they can take it and do what they need to on their side.
Mm. All right, so if you were to have a warehouse full of inventory and you had a customer wanting to say, hey, is this in stock? Then you could offer up an API to do something like that, right?
Yep, exactly.
Nice. So one thing we've got here is a few different kind of use cases for it. And we'd like to keep it, a lot of the attendees on the call here are within the convenience distribution industry. And when it comes to the different types of APIs, they are as varied as they are deep. And we can see that when it comes to, for instance, serving up product images, when it comes to different kind of products, we could have candy, tobacco products, and these, Paul, you had mentioned that shippers and displays were something that kind of a lot of people may have challenges with, right? They want something that's kind of timely and, say you have a seasonal display coming up. You want to know right away, then and there, if it's available, right? Could you talk to that a little more?
Yeah, that's it. And, especially in the context of product images, I think pretty much everybody knows what a carton of cigarettes would look like in our industry or what a Snicker bar would look like. But when it comes to the seasonal type of items and things like that, um, if you think about Valentine's Day coming up, they might have in a grocery store or even a convenience store a large cardboard display that, some stock boy had to put together, but it's going to have, 6 to 12 different type of candy bars in there. And they might have buy one, get one freeze or something like that. And to be able to show what that looks like and to allow someone to see that, to know that they're getting a Snickers or a Reese or gum or whatever it might be in there, um, just to really take your product to the next level and be able to present that data. In this day and age, everybody wants their remote ordering solutions to be like Amazon, because at this point everybody's used Amazon to some degree, but not all of us have quite the development staff that Amazon would have. So APIs will be a great way to leverage, you know, collecting those images, especially from some of the bigger manufacturers that may be able to present that type of data in an API where you could go and just call it and pull those images down.
Yeah, glad you mentioned that. You've even got within the resources section that we'll be sharing with folks after the webinar, you'll be able to see a few different major APIs for if you want to explore it, help you generate some ideas for what can be done with them. But again, to continue supplementing that here, we do have the different types of APIs like barcode and UPC lookup. Nick, when it comes to the ability for people to serve up information like that, with that and the product metadata, where can you see some benefit coming from those?
Yeah, so with the barcode UPC lookup, potentially if right now, if we're having to pull in barcodes on an interval basis, if the barcode was input wrong, um, there's no real way until the next batch of when we do an update to correct that. Whereas if we had an API, pretty much as soon as they change it on their back end, we're going to query for the barcode through the API and get that updated correct information. And then kind of similarly to the product images that Paul was talking about, if we can get product metadata from manufacturers that they kind of update and manage on the fly, that will allow us to provide more relevant info to ultimately the people selling and purchasing items so that they have more information and can make a more informed decision and potentially buy something that they may have otherwise not bought because they didn't know, um, does it have too much sugar for what I want to buy or not enough, that kind of thing. So it's definitely a lot of potential value there.
Yeah, yeah. You can never have enough sugar. That's
Yeah.
yeah, it's great that you mentioned that. It's having different points of information, for I think allergens, like in here is a significant one. Um, Something that we had discussed before was the importance of having that accurate and safe, not only for schools or any other place. It's this kind of dovetails perfectly into the reducing spoilage aspect here. And, Paul, you'd given some great points when we had talked before on that. Uh, it can really help if you have, you know, if you're sending something out on a given day, it needs to be sent out on that day. And you need to know if there is a delay in sending it out because that could affect where it's being routed. And, I was wondering if you could talk to that a little more as well.
Yeah, kind of getting into the section with your spoilage there and thinking about what that would look like too. Um, if you have manufacturer that's going to be delivering product to you, if they have API data rather than utilizing EDI, if they have an API that you could connect with, they could give you some types of advanced ship notifications, um, including things that may be cut from your original order, which is a pretty big problem in our industry. Vendors like to short product, and can be the same thing. If you have pre-books in the system that are allocated to go out on Monday next week, and the vendor shorts you 10 of them, then that means 10 people aren't going to get their order next week. So being able to be proactive to that, and have something set up that could, allow you to better communicate and get ahead of those problems. Or even, when it comes to the spoilage aspect, if the vendor is collecting and providing that data in like an advanced shipping notification through an API, then if you have close dated product or you have your own thresholds in the system and they have something that's maybe you wouldn't want to stock it in your warehouse if it's not within so many days of going bad. Um, it would give your purchasing team the ability to go back and maybe dispute that with the vendor or make other accommodations to order it and source it from someone else. Should you have that opportunity, and those could be some ways that you know come to evolve in the future. I could see those things being a big enhancement in our industry.
Yeah, yeah. That's the timeliness aspect is really one of the major selling points for it. Really, especially in this, um, when you're in an industry where you work with a lot of perishables, timeliness really matters. But it's like it does extend beyond even that, where I had personally made a purchase online. I had bought some tires, but then I realized that the tires I had gotten were not the right size. So I was able to cancel an order right away. And, within the span of 5 to 10 minutes, I was able to cancel the tires and then purchase ones that were the correct size right after. And we have this enriching data point here as one of our last ones, where making sure that the information that you serve up, this really does tie in with the timeliness. Having accurate, up-to-date, ready information is really quite critical. So with all that, we've got a few different roles that API are going to have, APIs have in the modern world. And really with this, one of the major benefits is that it stays on the IBM I, right? That's your system of record. And many of us are familiar with the RPG programming language and see the great benefits of developing with it. George, with some of your history and understanding of this, what are some of the benefits you see with maintaining, right, having APIs on your IBMI as a system of record? Where does that help?
Well, a couple of places. We can do everything in-house that requires data. We do rating, we do computations, we do validations. If we're if we're using an API, we don't need any of those. All we need
Mm,
is we're shipping from here to there. This is what we want to ship. This is the characteristics of it, weight and dimensions, and we get back all the information. If we do it in-house, we have programs that determine if it's used dimensional rating, if it qualifies for some of the extra charges like large package or additional handling. We don't need those programs anymore. We don't need the data. We don't need the parameters. And we know that if there's any change to any of those rules, it's the responsibility of the carrier. They do all the work on their side. And we have started getting back labels. We have generated all the labels in the past. Now we're starting to get back the shipping label. And they're very fussy. We have to go through certifications. They don't like this and they don't like that. And now with these, we don't have to, if the label's wrong, it's their problem. We didn't do it. We're just printing what they gave us. So,
right.
that reduces our efforts and we can concentrate on other things.
Which is extremely beneficial because one of the, we'll say, great benefits of the I is that it really enables teams to run lean because of how effective it is. And when you're working directly on your own in-house kind of system, building your own RPG programs with it, it's uh, certainly helpful. Adam, would you be able to talk to some of the aspects of incremental modernization that you've seen when it comes to developing APIs?
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of customers that we've worked with that they already have some sort of integration that they've built out, typically like a non-API integration. They're consuming batch files that they're being dropped on a routine basis or things like that. One of the big benefits of APIs is being able to start individually replacing those components and modernizing them as you have APIs available.
Right. Yeah, it's super uh, capable, we'll say. So yeah, appreciate that. As we're going through this, now we've got our next step here to give a little more information on use cases. So we'll proceed here. And yeah, this is courtesy of Adam over at Cato having put this together. So I'll run through here.
This is an example of a program we've built using RPG API Express or RxS. In this program, we're calling an API that provides information from a food products database, including nutrition, ingredients, and user-submitted product images. This API has a lot of operations, but we're going to focus on the get product details operation, which just needs us to pass in a UPC from a barcode. The API response is very large, but we're going to focus on a few parts, including basic nutrition details, as well as product images. Because this is an HTTP GET request, all request data is passed in the URL, so our compose is pretty simple. If this was a post, this is where we would typically build the JSON or XML request. RxS includes commands to make building JSON and XML requests easy, which lets you focus on where the data that goes into the JSON and XML is coming from. The transmit is where we need to provide details to the RxS transmit subprocedure about how to connect to the API. The URL we've set, what HTTP method we're using, and any credentials we might need to include. This is a pretty simple API, so there aren't many options to set. After the call to RxS transmit finishes, we'll have the response JSON from the API that contains our product details. With the response JSON, we then move over to the parse, which is going to take the JSON and turn it into usable data for us. Parsing takes place in a handler subprocedure that we point the RxS parse JSON subprocedure at. The handler makes up a large part of our program, but most of the code was generated from a sample of the API response using our build parse command. All we did was remove the parts we didn't care about and add in some code to write the data out to a database table. We're just using native IO here, but you could just as easily use SQL or pass the data off to another program. Part of what we're retrieving are URLs for product images, so we're also going to download those images and store them in the IFS. To make it easy to do that, we created a small subprocedure called getImageFromURL. It's making a fairly simple HTTP GET request to download an image, but instead of returning the data to a field, we're using it to directly store the image in an IFS file. To call our program, we're going to pass in a UPC for a bottle of Gatorade. And now that the program's finished, we can use ACS to run a basic SQL select query to check our database table and see the results. The table shows nutritional information and where in the IFS our product images are stored. We can see the images in the IFS using RDI. And open them up. Our first image is a picture of the front of the bottle. And our second image is a picture of the nutritional information.
That is pretty cool. The fact that you're able to simply send out a barcode as kind of one of the request parameters and then get this user submitted image back, it's pretty impressive what it's able to do. And the fact that RxS has these code generators really streamlines the process. You've got this toolkit of different means to build APIs quite rapidly. And we've got another example on our next item here.
An example of a program.
Here we go. So with this one, right, it's Adam, it's a quick kind of lookup of a barcode, right?
Yeah, just getting some product details from a non-food item barcode in this case.
Yeah. So let's hit play here and see what we've got for that.
Here's another example of calling an API using RPG API Express. This time we're calling an API that can retrieve general product information based on a UPC. This operation is another HTTP GET request and requires that we include a UPC as well as a key in the URL to access the API. The code looks very similar to our previous example. We start by building a URL that includes the UPC barcode. We set up our connection options with RxS transmit, including the URL and the HTTP method. We pass the JSON response over to Rx's parse JSON to call our handler subprocedure. Most of this handler code was generated using our build parse command. We just picked out the fields that we care about, and we're storing the data in a database table. To call the program, we're just going to pass in the UPC for a pair of red Nike shoes. And then now that that's finished, we're going to use ACS to check our database table and see a variety of details about the item that we looked up.
Yeah, that was great. It's you're able to see different items like the title, size, you have different dimensioning items for it. These are all things that carriers need to know for any different given reason, whether it's customer queries or if they're trying to determine weights that they're going to need to handle. It's having an API serve up information rapidly is extremely valuable in that way. We've got our last one here, and Adam, could you give a brief explainer on this one as well?
Yeah, so this one is calling out to an API to geocode an address, to take an address and get the latitude and longitude. There's a lot of things you can do with that information, like plotting where locations are on a map, or being able to calculate distances between two locations for like truck routing purposes, route optimization, things like that.
Yeah, and I like the name of the location that you give for this one. A lot of folks can relate to it. Let's get this rolling.
Well, we're going to use RPG API Express to call an API to perform geocoding on an address. We're going to provide an address, and the API is going to take that address and convert it to a latitude and longitude. We could then take that location information and plot addresses on a map, plan a delivery route, or estimate the distance between locations. This is another HTTP GET request, so the address info is passed in as part of the URL, along with an API key. Addresses contain spaces, so in this case, we need to perform URL encoding on our address before we add it to the URL. URL encoding replaces spaces and other characters with a percent sign followed by the hex value of the character. For example, a space is replaced with %20. RxS provides the RxS convert subprocedure to help with this, but it can perform many other types of conversion as well. After we have our URL, we set our connection details for RxS transmit. The URL, the HTTP method. We then pass off the response JSON to RxS parse JSON, which will then call our parsing handler subprocedure. The handler subprocedure should look very similar to our previous examples. Again, this wasn't something that we had to build from scratch. We used our build parse command to generate a handler from a sample of the API response and then modified it to meet our needs. Addresses can be pretty long, so to call our program, we made a CL command to call the RPG program to ensure our parameter is passed in correctly. For this example, we're passing in the address of the New Orleans Marriott Hotel. That's the site of the Common Power Up 2026 conference coming up in April. Hope to see some of you there. And now that that's finished, we can switch over to ACS and take a look at our database table. And it includes a few records, including the latitude and longitude. And those records are based on how well the address was matched.
It's great stuff. Yeah, there's just so many different kinds of possibilities and things that you can do with this. And that kind of, goes hand in hand with our next slide here, where APIs, it's hard to put them as optional because they are just so absolutely effective in helping with a variety of business needs. One of our primary ones being here, we touched on this on the slide with the various icons showing different use cases. They enable real-time access to information. And if you are needing images or product information or location information, APIs really are a means to do that. Now, along with that, we have our next point here of how the IBM I participates fully without abandoning RPG or the DB2 database. Adam, would you be able to talk to that a little more on the how that can really help businesses, make the most of what their resources already uh, involve? How it helps the current architecture they've got.
Sure. I mean, you did kind of summarize it there a bit. Most companies on the IBM I have made a pretty heavy long-term investment in the IBM I. They have staff that are, trained and familiar with the platform that know how to develop on it. And switching to something completely new just to be able to API enable your business just doesn't make sense. Um, Not to mention just the general. Uh, I mean, the IBM I is just a great system that, doesn't have a lot of problems that other systems do. So keeping APIs on a system that has, the reputation for stability, securability, things like that, just makes sense.
Yeah, you don't get lost through a bunch of layers of abstraction with it. Yeah, so, a system that's effective really with what's present. So yeah, and kind of along with that, how you build, secure, and maintain APIs really does matter as much as the APIs that you're exposing or consuming. So kind of along with those, we have a couple other points that uh, I can read here, but really to get to the central, one of the central aspects is you want to evolve with your partners. You want to, an API isn't just something that you set up and finish. It's this solution, like an API infrastructure is a kind of solution that allows you to adapt and grow and make use of a whole just enormous number of different pieces of information out there. It's whatever you can dream up, you can do. And really, there's a lot of amazing things that you can do with it. And with that, we'll move on to our questions and answers section. Let's see, I'll start with one of our top ones here. We've got thinking about the future of AI. What are your thoughts on exposing ERP data slash APIs to AI agents or LLMs? Specifically, what are your thoughts on MCP servers as a path into the data? IBM I has just released a beta on IBM I MCP server. So, with that, Adam, would you be interested in touching on that one?
Yeah, I actually didn't even know that they had a beta for the MCP server out now, so that's great information. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious to all of us at this point, or should be, that AI and LLMs are a big deal in IT and business in general. There's certainly ways to integrate them off of the IBM I, but going back to the previous point, the closer you can tie these things together, the more stability you're going to have, the more performance you're going to have. Being able to just feed this data directly from your IBM I into an MCP server and do something with it, it's going to eliminate some of the complexity that you're otherwise going to have to deal with.
Yeah, yeah, we could use a little more simplicity in our lives. So, yeah, Paul, would you have any additional thoughts on, the future of AI and APIs and how they kind of work together?
I am by no means an AI expert, so I can't give a lot of weight to it other than just be careful what you feed to them. Make sure that it's not used to train the model and that it's not giving your proprietary data away to everybody else who's connected to that LLM. So that's
Yeah.
the best answer that I can do there, but I could certainly see using them as a tool to help you maybe do some of the initial thought-provoking aspects of building your own tools and things like that, to really kind of get you a starting point and have like a senior developer kind of look over it and say, hey, I can use this piece. I got to code my own piece. And now we have um, a working tool there. That's my 2 cents on it anyway.
But we do also have another question here. Let's see. When APIs are used to integrate or modernize legacy systems, what approaches work best to reduce risk without disrupting existing operations? Let's see. George, would you have any insights into that one?
We've started using AI a little bit to, either something we're not familiar with, ask it to write some little programs. We've come to the conclusion that AI is not really doesn't know a lot about RPG yet. Maybe it needs time to learn. But I would, maybe there are other languages it knows more about. RPG is sort of off on the side language, is not very common. But yeah, I would say
Yeah,
be very careful with using AI and RPG.
certainly. Yeah. And, Nick, would you be able to kind of expand on this? When it comes to, we do have a lot of different topics here. We have AI and APIs, and, how would you consider both of them influencing the modernization of your systems?
Well, it's kind of an aside to the modernization, but just had a thought that one of the issues with dealing with AS400 and these legacy systems in many ways is that as we have employee turnover and we have to onboard people who in school are certainly not getting exposed to IBM I RPG code to any large degree, um, the training process can be rather difficult. And if we can have an API that gives an AI, assuming we've got the security considerations and the confidentiality of the information uh, secured, if we can train the API on the relationships between
Mm,
different tables in the database and different information about the individual system that's being used, that could be a really valuable tool for um, onboarding new employees and just making it easier to sustain the level of kind of quality maintenance and improvement to the infrastructure that we want to maintain, especially moving forward.
Yeah, that's pretty brilliant. You can use the APIs to pull in the data and then help transport that to the LLM that's going to make use of it in some kind of way. And the fact that you mentioned different tables having information kind of not passed to each other, but seeing how it relates is really one of the great benefits of AI, where it's able to generate insights based on the information that you provide to it, novel insights that might not have been immediately visible otherwise. So there are certainly a lot of different capabilities uh, out there. So the last one I've got is a pop quiz item. What does API stand for? You seem to be pretty wise into these things. What's your best guess?
Application programming interface. Hopefully people knew that coming into this. Otherwise, we've thrown an acronym around quite a lot.
Right on. Oh, it looks like we have one additional question here. Do you see APIs more as a temporary bridge for legacy systems or a long-term strategy for extending their life? Um, yeah, Paul, what are your thoughts on APIs as temporary versus sustaining?
Yeah, in a very IT guy answer, both. Um, to utilize something to build a bridge to accomplish one task, and then, you kind of put it in the archive, for instance. Or maybe you have something where you're participating with a particular vendor or manufacturer's initiative that exists just for 2026. And then you have the initiatives that just never seem to end because, hey, it's working good, it's stable, don't change anything. So, typical IT guy kind of answer there. Real quick, just one more thing. I snuck in and answered a question during the presentation that someone had posted out there, and they were asking if we see standard EDI messages being replaced by APIs. And
Mhm.
the short answer is yes. CDR is working on some things now to provide vendor inventory and to help customers get their incentives for certain things. and just other things in the supply chain. Again, kind of ringing that bell for real-time data where you could get those shipping notifications and order changes. Those will be things that continue to grow in our industry in the future. And I think it would just be a little quicker than maybe waiting for an EDI transaction set to come through and again have to go through a batch process, update your database, and then have somebody come in, connect, and gather that info. But smaller data sets. And generally with APIs, and Adam, you could probably speak to this more than I could. Generally speaking, APIs contain a small data set and not a huge, ginormous one. Not to say that they couldn't, but that's generally my understanding of how they're being used today.
Yeah, yeah, in an ideal world, I think it's important to also, that there's API is a big tent, and while there are some standards, there's also a lot of flexibility in how things are implemented. But yeah, leaning more towards APIs does give you the ability to, for example, if you're updating items, just send the one specific field it is that you need to update, not provide like a whole refresh of the record with the change, but a bunch of things that haven't changed. I guess speaking to the EDI question, I've been working with APIs in the IBMI for about 15 years now, and I can remember working with customers on projects 10 plus years ago about deprecating EDI interfaces to replace them with APIs. There's been XML specifications out there for longer than that on how to properly represent those sort of EDI documents in XML in as compatible a way as possible. I've seen customers replace EDI messaging with JSON-based APIs. Admittedly, it is generally smaller customers that we've seen migrating away from EDI towards APIs, but it's still very much within the realm of possibility.
There is absolutely so much that you can do with it, and it really helps you transform and take those kind of, step-by-step approaches into helping your whole system modernize. We do have a
Yeah.
question here that I'm a I'm not too familiar with the term, so if anyone on the call here can help answer, that would be fantastic. Uh, do you think TOON or tune will replace JSON in the future? Um, is anyone here familiar with tune?
I have seen it. It's a compact JSON format, basically. If I've got the right result here. Um, and it seems to be kind of more aimed specifically at like LLM prompts. There's been variations and like enhancements, different like flavors of JSON that people have come up with over the years. BSON is one that's specifically around exchanging binary data. There's other ways to exchange data as well. Protobuf is another one. Um, all of them have some use cases. JSON is by far and away like the largest one being used. But I mean, for many years it was XML or nothing, and XML is very much on the decline. So I don't know if Tune specifically will replace JSON, but it's quite possible something will. I think it's going to be a little bit challenging just due to how much more entrenched APIs are now than they were 15 years ago. And JSON having such integration with so many development languages, especially Node.js. It's got a lot more to stand on, I think, than XML did when that was first being kind of promoted.
We do have one more question here. Let's see. Can APIs let us integrate Friedman's frontier with our internal systems? For example, our CRM system. And at the high conceptual level, it would be yes. APIs really do let you communicate with practically any system, as long as you are able to, for instance, it sounds like with the CRM system, it would need to offer APIs in order to communicate with it. And if you were to want to communicate with an external CRM system, that's APIs are really this extremely flexible architecture. One thing that I've heard it described as is kind of like the connective tissue of the internet. It really helps communicate different information across just multiple systems. It is truly a programming paradigm that many businesses will benefit from adopting. And with that, we have uh, gone through our questions. Really amazing and glad to see that a lot of folks were asking questions here today. It's really makes for a successful and engaging webinar. So with that, we'll proceed to our resources section here. One thing that we'd like you to walk away with here is the idea of Cato Integration's proof of concept with RxS, RPG API Express. The proof of concept is really, it's hard to compare something that is so tailored to your system and extremely beneficial in that way. The different use cases that you saw today are all great examples of what could be a proof of concept, except in this instance, it would be built with your specific environment in mind. And the best part about it is that it is absolutely free. Doesn't cost a dime to you, no commitment whatsoever. But it's a way for you to begin exploring APIs using RPG in this hyper effective way. And Anna, would you be able to talk to the benefits that customers have seen with the proof of concept?
Yeah, typically when we have customers reach out to us for API integration projects that maybe they don't have experience with it, we'll help build out a proof of concept based around whatever their current project need is. We'll work with them to gather the appropriate documentation, make sure all the right data is being passed, things like that, and then deliver this working proof of concept that they can run on their system with a trial version of our software and see how it works. You have access to the source code behind that proof of concept, so you can look at it with your development team and get a feel for, yeah, this is a thing that our team can take and run with. We've had customers that have taken proof of concepts that we've built and felt really confident with them right off the bat and had stuff moved into production in a week or two after we've given them a proof of concept. It really is remarkable to see situations like that, and they do happen for us with a lot of frequency.
Yeah, that's really amazing that it's able to have such a fast ramp up speed for it, because that is one of the biggest challenges, and we'll even say threats that comes to business growing in this kind of way, is having a product scope that just keeps expanding. Knowing that people can build an API and get it to production right away helps beat that kind of issue where people say, oh, yeah, I need to have this just 2 weeks from now. And if you're able to do it that much faster, it's over deliver, right? Within a short span of time. It's really amazing what it can do. So along with this, we do have a few thoughts that we'd like you to take home with you. So think of the current infrastructure that you have now and different kinds of data that you might want to consume from an outside carrier. What are some kinds of data that you'd like to have tomorrow? Um, when it comes to data that you have to offer, what would you like to send to your partners, your business partners? And what do they have that you'd like to use? When it comes to handling information, where are some of the file-based integrations that you've got? Do you have to run an application, keep it insulated, and then send it out as a batch? That can certainly be a struggle. And we've got an interesting one here. If you created just a singular API this year, what would it be? And if you have any answers to those that you'd like to share with us, certainly please send them our way, and we'd love to explore those ideas with you more. And as mentioned earlier, we've got some different kinds of APIs that you can explore yourself. There's a lot of different possibilities out there, and these are a few of just probably hundreds of thousands, possibly millions for all I know. There are just so many APIs out there. And with that, we'll close on out. Thank you, everyone, for this webinar today. Really enjoyed it. Great talking with everyone. And with all that, take care.